Imagine a man towering at 6 feet 4 inches, with the build of a giant, yet the heart of a poet. A man whose laugh could fill a room, whose kindness radiated in every gesture, and whose very presence on screen brought comfort to millions of Americans. That man was Dan Blocker, and while millions loved him, there was one person he truly could never get along with. Who was it? And why did this gentle giant harbor such frustration toward a colleague? This is the story of Dan Blocker, actor, soldier, husband, father, and television icon, a man whose life was as captivating as the characters he brought to life. Dan Blocker wasn't born Dan Blocker. On December 10, 1928, he entered the world as Bobby Dan Davis in the rugged hills of DeKalb, Texas. Life in Texas during the 1930s was far from easy, but it instilled in him lessons that would define his character for life: hard work, humility, and an unshakable sense of family. Growing up, Dan displayed a remarkable duality: immense physical strength coupled with an unusually gentle temperament. Neighbors recall a boy who could lift heavy tools and farm equipment with ease, yet who would also rescue injured animals and help neighbors without a second thought. Even at a young age, he had the heart of someone destined to embody warmth and integrity. His parents owned a small store in O'Donnell, Texas, where young Dan learned the value of perseverance and community. He attended Texas Military Institute, where discipline and resilience became part of his daily life, and later saw Ross State Teachers College. There, he excelled both academically and athletically, gaining a reputation as a dedicated football player and a charismatic young man. But Dan Blocker wasn't just physically imposing. He was intellectually curious. He earned a degree in English, later pursuing a master's in dramatic arts, a combination that would uniquely prepare him for both life and his future on screen. These formative experiences would mold a man who could navigate the challenges of Hollywood while remaining grounded in humility and empathy. Before the cameras, before fame, before Bonanza, Dan Blocker served his country. Drafted into the United States Army during the Korean War, he became an infantry sergeant, a role that tested courage, leadership, and resilience. Those who served with him describe Blocker as a quiet force of integrity, someone who led by example rather than by command. He often credited his military experiences for shaping his worldview, saying they strengthened his empathy and respect for sacrifice. Even amidst the harsh realities of combat, Blocker carried himself with quiet dignity, earning admiration from comrades who recognized both his physical courage and his emotional intelligence. Returning to Texas after his service, he embraced civilian life by becoming a teacher, sharing his love of literature and history with students. He was more than an educator. He was a mentor, inspiring young minds to dream beyond the confines of their small Texas town. It was in this period that his life quietly but inevitably began to shift toward the stage and screen. Dan Blocker's entry into Hollywood was far from a straight path. The late 1950s saw him taking small roles in television shows like The Rifleman, Gunsmoke, and The Restless Gun. Yet, even in these early appearances, his charisma and commanding presence were undeniable. Casting directors noticed a unique quality. Dan wasn't just big in stature, he was big in spirit. In 1959, Blocker's life changed forever when he was cast as Eric Haas Cartwright in Bonanza. This role would define not just his career, but also the lives of millions who tuned into the long-running series. Haas, the middle son of the Cartwright family, was a character defined by gentle strength, humor, and moral integrity, traits Dan carried off-screen as naturally as he did on screen. Audiences immediately connected with Haas's warmth. In a genre dominated by gunfights and rugged landscapes, Blocker offered a counterbalance, a human heart full of kindness and decency. Over 14 seasons and 415 episodes, Bonanza became a television institution, cementing Blocker as one of America's most beloved figures. Critics noted that his performances brought emotional depth to the show, transforming it from a standard Western into a story about family, love, and human values. While Haas was beloved on screen, the man behind the character was equally devoted to his real-life family. Dan Blocker's marriage to Dolphia Parker Blocker is remembered as one of Hollywood's most enduring and genuine love stories. They met while students at S. Ross State University in Alpine, Texas, and married in 1952, years before Dan's rise to fame. Their relationship was built not on glamour or ambition, but on mutual respect, shared values, and a profound sense of trust. Dan often credited Dolphia, affectionately called Gia, for his confidence and stability, saying her quiet strength allowed him to pursue his dreams with focus. Even as Bonanza demanded long hours and public attention, Dan prioritized his family. Gia remained the anchor, ensuring their 4 children, twin sons David and Dirk, and daughters Deborah Lee and Dana Lynn, grew up in a home filled with love, laughter, and moral guidance. Friends and colleagues often remarked that Blocker's humility and warmth were, in large part, nurtured by Gia's steady presence. He refused to let Hollywood fame change his devotion to home and family. Despite the idyllic image of the Cartwright family on screen, real life on set wasn't always harmonious. Among the cast, one tension stood out. Dan Blocker's fraught relationship with Pernell Roberts, who played the eldest Cartwright son, Adam. Roberts was outspoken and intellectual, often critical of scripts he found shallow. Blocker, who valued loyalty and professionalism, found these criticisms challenging. Pernell thought he was smarter than the rest of us, Blocker once remarked. Their disagreements weren't about fame or ego, they were about conflicting values. One man seeking creative depth, the other devoted to teamwork and providing wholesome entertainment. The tension was palpable but never violent. Blocker, known for his easygoing and generous nature, often felt torn between patience and frustration. When Roberts eventually left Bonanza in 1965, Blocker experienced a mix of relief and sadness. He respected Roberts' talent, but struggled to reconcile it with the bitterness and rigidity he often displayed on set. This conflict, in many ways, defined an important narrative in Blocker's life: the clash between heart and intellect, instinct and analysis, kindness and criticism. Despite the strain, Blocker's legacy remained one of warmth, generosity, and integrity, a stark contrast to Roberts' independent, but often divisive approach. Tragedy struck on May 13, 1972. At only 43 years old, Dan Blocker passed away in Englewood, California, following a routine gallbladder surgery complicated by a pulmonary embolism. The suddenness of his death stunned the world. Here was a man who had embodied strength, humor, and warmth, now gone in an instant. His passing left a profound void, not just for his family, but for the millions who had grown up watching Hoss Cartwright on Bonanza. Michael Landon, Lauren Green, and the rest of the cast were deeply affected, mourning the loss of a friend and colleague whose heart had been as big as his physical presence. Even in death, Blocker's impact was undeniable. He had redefined the role of masculinity in television. A man could be strong without being cruel, commanding without being harsh, and heroic without sacrificing kindness. His warmth, humor, and moral compass left an indelible mark on audiences and on the television landscape itself. Why does Dan Blocker remain beloved decades after his death? It's not just because he was Hoss Cartwright or a giant on screen. It's because he represented something rare: the ability to combine physical presence with genuine compassion, fame with humility, and professionalism with heartfelt warmth. His life was full of lessons: the importance of family, the value of integrity, and the need to treat others with kindness even when they challenge you. He faced conflict, career uncertainty, and the pressures of Hollywood with grace and perseverance. And though he didn't live long enough to enjoy all the fruits of his labor, the legacy he left behind continues to inspire. In the end, Dan Blocker's story isn't just about an actor or a television star. It's about a man who believed in goodness, lived with integrity, and reminded the world that true strength is measured not by size, but by heart